Hello, friends and listeners. Welcome to Truth, Lies, and Alibis, the true crime podcast from three friends sharing their perspectives from having years of 911 dispatching experience.
Episode 15.
Free to Be You, the Gwen Arujo story.
In celebration of LGBTQIA plus Pride Month, on today's episode, we talk about the brave Gwen Arujo and how even after her murder, she continued to help her community.
I just wanted to start off this episode by saying Happy Pride Month. Yay!
Yay, happy Pride!
Especially to my daughter, Novalie. This month, I wanted to share at least one LGBTQIA crime story. And I had heard the story that I was going to share with you before, and I just thought it was interesting and should share it. So,
yeah.
I don't have a question for this one.
Okay.
So, in September 2006, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed the Gwen Arujo Justice for Victims Act. I think that's how you say it. It's Araujo.
Arujo?
How would you say that? Arujo.
Yeah.
And according to Wikipedia, the law limited the use by criminal defendants of the gay or trans panic defense by allowing parties to instruct jurors not to let bias influence their decisions, including bias against the victim based on his or her gender identity or sexual orientation. The law put California on record as declaring it contrary to public policy for defendants to be acquitted or convicted of a lesser included offense on the basis of appeals to societal bias. The story that I'm going to tell today led to this act, and it's pretty heartbreaking, so just warning now, there's a lot in this story. I just say trigger warning for like sexual assault, hate crimes, all of that. If you feel like you can't listen, just skip this episode. But I felt like this story is important to share because I feel like a lot of times, even now, right, we live in this world where it's more accepted to be part of the LGBTQ community, but it's still...
But there's still hate out there.
Yeah, and there shouldn't be. But there is.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's important we share these stories when we can.
And we want to make sure that everybody out there knows that we love you all.
Agreed. Gwen Amber Rose Arujo, I hope I'm saying that name right, was 17 years old when she was murdered by four men she called her friends in Newark, California. Two of these men she had been sexually intimate with in the weeks prior to the murder, and they beat and strangled her to death when they discovered she was transgender. So Gwen Arujo was born February 24th, 1985 in Brawley, California. In 1999, when she was 14 years old, she came out as transgender. She picked the name Gwen after her favorite musician, Gwen Stefani. She grew her hair out long and planned to undergo hormone treatment and to have surgery when she was old enough and could afford it. Her family fully accepted her and told her they loved her no matter what, which I would like to say, I feel like every family should be that way, and it's sad that it's not.
Agreed.
Arujo first met the murderers Michael Magidis, I might butcher these names just so everyone knows. Michael Magidison, Jose Merrill, Jaron Neighbors, and Jason Cazares in late August or early September of 2002. The night they met, she flirted with all four of the men, and it is reported that they smoked marijuana together. And this information I got from like a couple different sources. One was like a Murderpedia page. So this is just what they know from like court documents and from what witnesses said. So we don't really know if that's entirely true or not.
Gotcha.
After she left, neighbors apparently asked the others if she could be a male, but none of the other men took it seriously. Later, she would be intimate with Magidison and Merrill. She claimed to be menstruating and would push her partner's hands away to prevent them from discovering she had the anatomy of a male, is what they told investigators later. Merrill's brother, Jose, was dating Nicole Brown, who was acquainted with Arujo and had actually been involved in a physical fight with her after Nicole had dared her to strip for the men. Because of this fight, the four men started debating more in late September as to whether or not Arujo was a female, and were heard saying something bad could happen to her, and that's in quotes, if she was not. So I include all this just because it was like premeditated.
Mm-hmm.
In October of 2002, Gwen went to a party wearing a mini skirt and a crop top. It was the first party she had worn a miniskirt to, so she was starting to feel like more comfortable being herself, which is like a brave thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
It was at the house rented by Jose and Paul Merrill, and in the early morning hours of October 4th, it's reported that Michael, who is Magdalene, asked Arujo to allow him to touch her genitals, and she refused. Brown later would suggest they should inspect her, and Brown is the girlfriend of Jose. And I don't know, maybe she was jealous. It kind of sounds like she was jealous to me a little bit, but she suggested that they should inspect her, and Michael took her to the bathroom where he reportedly had sex with her. After half an hour had passed, Brown went to the bathroom and forced her to let them inspect her. Brown was surprised and blurted out, and this is in quotes, "It's a fucking man," and the men became violent. Arujo tried to leave, but she was forced back inside by the men, and Emmanuel Merrill would later testify that he tried to escort her out, and Emmanuel is one of the brothers of the people who lived in the apartment. He would later testify that he tried to lead her out, but was stopped by the other men. Jose Merrill reportedly vomited when he learned that Arujo had male genitalia and said, "I can't be fucking gay." Those are his words. After she was brought back to the house, Michael began to grab her skirt and underwear and then proceeded to punch her in the face and knock her to the ground, where he put her in a chokehold before others pulled him off. She begged the men to stop and said, "No, please don't. I have a family." Jose then struck her in the head with a can of food, which cut her head, and then he struck her with a frying pan. So she was bleeding at this point. So at some point after all this, neighbors and Casares left in Michael's truck to retrieve shovels and a pickaxe from Casares' house. When they returned, Arujo was still conscious and bleeding from her head while sitting on the couch, and Jose ordered her off the couch because he was worried about blood getting everywhere. Michael then hit her head against the living room wall at his knee and knocked her out. And apparently witnesses would later testify that he hit her so hard that he left a huge hole in the wall. So he hit her head against it so hard that there was a hole in the wall, which is just awful. The assault continued, and eventually Michael bound her wrists and ankles and wrapped her in a comforter before carrying her to the garage. After this, recollection of the night varies between the subjects. So,
Of course.
Yeah, as it often does. Neighbors testified that Michael strangled her with a rope and Casares struck her with a shovel, while Michael would testify it was actually neighbors who strangled her and struck her with a shovel, and Jose Merrill testified that he was cleaning the couch and the carpets to get her blood out. Autopsy would later reveal that she died from strangulation associated with blunt force trauma to the head. She was taken near Sierra Nevada mountains and buried in a shallow grave in El Dorado National Forest near Silver Fork Road in El Dorado County. Brown would ask Jose later what happened, and he would reply, in quotes, "Let's just say she had a long walk home." Partygoers didn't report the crime, and Arujo usually checked in with her mom because they were really close, and when she didn't come home the day after the party, her mom called police on October 5th to report her missing. At first, of course, officers didn't take the case seriously, and it was reported they didn't take it seriously because Gwen was transgender and was known to stay out overnight. Eventually, rumors led to a report from her aunt on October 9th, and that is when they began to interview the people who were at the party. So I guess there was a bunch of rumors going around that these subjects had murdered a transgender, and her aunt eventually heard and instantly thought of her, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
2 days after she was reported missing, a friend of neighbors told police that neighbors had confessed to a friend about the murder, and the friend agreed to wear a wire and speak to neighbors about the crime. When confronted, neighbors agreed to lead the authorities to Gwen's body, and investigators recovered her body and charged them all, Michael, neighbors, Jose, and Paul, with murder on October 17th. After he was arrested, neighbors wrote a letter to his girlfriend telling her that they had planned to kill Gwen and get rid of her body. So all of this was a plan, and I guess there had been conversations before where they had made statements about wanting to kill her because she was transgender. This letter also led to the arrest of Casares. So neighbors pleaded guilty on February 24th, 2003 to voluntary manslaughter and got an 11-year sentence with the promise to testify against the others. He gave a detailed account of the murder and the burial, and on August 5th, 2006, he was sentenced, and he was expected to spend only 5 years in prison from that point. And then there were 2 trials after that for the remaining 3 murderers, which he had to testify at in order to make good on his part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't include too much of it because I really just wanted to talk about her.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And just kind of bring to light that this kind of stuff happens. So the first trial began on April 14th of 2004. Before the first trial, the prosecuting attorney, Alameda County Deputy District Attorney Chris Lamira, argued that simply being transgender should not have been a death sentence. And he said one can debate the propriety of one choosing to identify with a gender other than the one they are born with. But I trust juries to understand that people don't get to make life or death decisions simply based on someone's lifestyle. That's not a world in which I want to live or most people want to live in. In this trial, Michael's attorney said that his client had been, and these are quotes again, shocked beyond reason to learn that he had unwittingly had sex with a man, aka gay panic defense. That's what they call it.
Jeez.
He also said stuff like he felt like he had been raped because he didn't know that he was with a man, which no. Because I feel like, too, like, at this point, too, they had been questioning her before this, right?
Right.
And that they continued to participate in these sexual actions with her. So that...
It
I
wasn't,
mean,
yeah.
It's not
a
defense.
Yeah.
It's not a defense anyways, but it's also not a defense, especially when you continually...
Well, you can't go in and say, oh, I was so shocked, I didn't know what was going on, that except when you've already talked with your friends about it and people have heard you talk about it.
Well, the thing is, too, they knew because they had already made a plan to kill her.
Exactly.
Which is just
my point.
The whole thing is disgusting. The whole thing, they are disgusting trash humans. And I just want it known that that's how I feel about it. But none of this, just none of the gay panic, quote unquote, defense makes sense to me. And it's a good thing that it's not allowed to be a defense.
Yeah,
anymore.
that's absolute garbage.
So this trial ended in a mistrial on June 22nd following 9 days of deliberation. And so I think a thing that was pointed out in the research that I did is during this trial, Gwen was referred to as a male subject. And they used her dead name. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
The entire trial is what I saw. So the second trial began on May 31st, 2005, which is a little over a year later, right? This trial was a little different as Gwen's mom had petitioned for a posthumous, I think that's how you say it, name change that was granted. The name she chose was Gwen Amber Rose Arujo, as Rose was the name her mom had picked out if she was going to have a girl. The lawyers now had to refer to her using female pronouns in her chosen name. Michael, Merrill, Cazares were charged with first-degree murder with hate crime enhancements, and they all blamed each other at trial, of course. They all said...
Of course they fucking did.
The other person did it, or it was their idea, or, you know...
Because it's all big talk. Yeah, it's all big talk until you're actually confronted with the consequences of your own actions.
Yeah. During closing statements, Cazares' attorney said that the 3 defendants were, and I'm quoting, ordinary human beings who were guilty at most of manslaughter and tried to say it was a crime of passion, which, again, it was premeditated. They had said multiple times what they were going to do.
Yeah, crime of passion, how? You're using passion as another word for hate?
Apparently.
Because...
Yeah, because this is a hate crime. 100% It's a hate crime. After a week of deliberation on September 12th, the jury announced its verdicts. Cazares was a mistrial, and Michael and Merrill were each convicted on second-degree murder, but not convicted of the hate crime enhancement, which is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, that's...
Like, how? The only reason that they did this, or the only reason that they're claiming they did this, was because she was a transgender woman.
Yeah, it wouldn't have happened any other way. That's the circumstances that led to their actions.
Like, let's look at what the definition of a hate crime is. So, a hate crime, also known as a bias-motivated crime or a bias crime, is a prejudice-motivated crime which occurs when a perpetrator targets a victim because of their membership or perceived membership of a certain social group or racial demographic. Example of such groups can include and are almost exclusively limited to ethnicity, disability, language, nationality, physical appearance, age, religion, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Non-criminal actions that are motivated by these reasons are often called bias incidents. I'm reading this from Wikipedia. Hate crime generally refers to criminal acts which are seen to have been motivated by bias against one or more of the social groups listed above or biased against their derivatives. Incidents may involve physical assault, homicide, damage to property, bullying, harassment, verbal abuse, which includes slurs or insults, mate crime, or offensive graffiti or letters, so like hate mail.
Mm-hmm.
Please tell me how that
doesn't qualify
crime.
as a hate crime. Yeah.
When I read that, I was like, I don't, and maybe it's because it was before. I mean, it was 2005. That doesn't seem like that long ago, but it is long.
No, it was, especially now that it's in 2022.
Yeah.
And really, society's even struggling now to make changes for the better.
Yeah, and it's also, like, we've made so much progress, but we have so much more progress to make. That's how I think of it. You know what I mean? Because, I don't know. In 2005, I was, like, 15, and it wasn't as accepted as
it for sure wasn't.
Now.
When I was 17 at the time, and at my high school, one of my best friends was the only openly gay man in my high school, and he got shit every day for it.
Yep, and that's not how it should be. Love is love, and people should be able to love whoever they want without having to fear people hating them and murdering because they love someone who doesn't know them thinks they shouldn't. Or
yeah, it's all so, like, my brain is wired in a very logical kind of way. And, like, that's just how, like, I default to thinking is in those logical ways. Like, I'm not normally, like, super emotionally charged. Like, it happens occasionally, but for the most part, that makes sense, like, logically. And, like, the logic side of me doesn't understand why people are so fucking hung up on this shit.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Let them live their lives. Do you think, especially poor Gwen, like, she knew how the world was going to perceive her, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's difficult enough already coming to terms with the fact that you're not cis, right? That you don't identify with the gender you were born into. To come to that conclusion is difficult enough. You think she's going to willingly do that when she knows more than half of the world will hate her for it?
Yeah. And she shouldn't have to worry about that. She shouldn't have to live that way.
If anything, that makes her one of the bravest people for actively coming forward and being true to herself.
Yep. And that's all I could think about, too. What you said is she was brave. She was herself, and she...
Yes.
It's just sad. I read some statement somewhere that the jury just didn't believe that it was a hate crime, and I just don't. Maybe it's because the times back then, or maybe the hate crime wasn't well known. Maybe they didn't understand what a hate crime actually was. I don't know. I mean, they got life in prison, right? So they're going to be in prison, which is great, but also it was a hate crime.
Absolutely.
That's all I wanted to say about that. It just pissed me off. They were sentenced to life in prison. Meryl expressed remorse, but Michael was angry and expressed no remorse. To avoid a third trial, Casares pled no contest to manslaughter and was only sentenced to 6 years in prison. And with the time already served, he was released. And something I read somewhere said that he was having a baby and wanted to be released earlier or something like that. Or he had a baby or a child that he wanted to be released earlier for. And I was like, nobody cares. I know that's mean, but... you took someone's child.
Exactly what I was going to say. Yes.
And then what are you going to do? Go spread your hate to that child that you're going to have?
Yeah, what if your child grows up and tells you that they're not comfortable in their own skin? What if that's your baby that somebody does that to next, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure that you would feel a lot differently. On the first anniversary of the murder, Horizons Foundation created the Gwen Arujo Memorial Fund for Transgender Education, and its purpose was to support school-based programs in 9 county Bay areas that promote understanding of transgender people and issues through annual grants. Through this fund, Sylvia Guerrero and her family spoke in middle and high schools about transgender awareness and understanding, and by 2005, she had spoken at more than 20 schools. So that's Sylvia Guerrero is Gwen's mother, and she worked as a legal assistant at a San Jose law firm, but as of 2016 was homeless due to PTSD from the incident. She has been unable to return to work and now shuffles her belongings from relatives' houses using a borrowed car from her friend, and that was as of 2016. So I hope things are better for her now, but I didn't find anything. So there's different media portrayals that I kind of wanted to cover a little bit, just tell you about, that you could watch if you wanted to, like, learn more about her story. There's a Lifetime movie entitled A Girl Like Me, the Gwen Arujo story. And then there was also a 2007 documentary, Trained in the Ways of Men. It's by Michelle Prevost, and it examines the 2002 murder and aims to debunk the so-called gay panic or trans panic defense. So I haven't watched any. I've watched the Lifetime movie. There's also Deadly ID, an episode of Investigations Discovery Fatal Encounters, Season 1, Episode 8, and it aired in 2012. It explores the whole timeline from Arujo's and from Michael's perspectives. An episode of the Investigation Discovery Channel series Murder Among Friends, entitled Murder Party, is also about the case, and it examines the backgrounds of the killers and the friends, how they got caught, interviews with the victim's mother, friends, and victim's advocates. So maybe that has more from her mom if you want to see how she's doing. So this leads us back to September 2006 when Schwarzenegger signed the Gwen Arujo Justice for Victims Act into law. And in September of 2014, California Governor Jerry Brown signed Assembly Bill number 2501 into law, and this law further restricted the use of the gay trans panic defense and amended the California manslaughter statute to prohibit the defendant from claiming they are provoked to murder a victim by discovering the victim's sexual identity or gender identity. So, Casares was released from prison in July of 2012. Neighbors was released from prison sometime before 2016. Jose Merrill was granted parole in 2016 with the support of Sylvia Guerrero, maybe because he had shown remorse. Michael Magdalene said he was not ready for release at his parole board hearing in 2016, and Guerrero also opposed his release, and he was denied parole again in September of 2019. Gwen was described as funny and sweet, and she was a beautiful 17-year-old when she was murdered. So that is the case, the really, really sad case of Gwen Arujo.
I think it's ones like these that hit me the hardest, because obviously serial killers and people that are capable of committing murders are horrible, twisted people anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's the ones that are like so tangled up in hate of just somebody living their life. She was targeted because she was trying to be true to herself.
Yeah, she was. And it just, the whole, like, it's good that something good came out of something so horrible, but it shouldn't have had to happen in order for that to come out, right? That should not be a defense. Let's just say, hypothetically, somebody said, oh, he was straight, and so I killed him. That wouldn't be a defense. And it's not any different from being a part of the LGBTQIA community. It's just not.
Yeah. It's the systemic biases. It's what people consider quote unquote normal. Anybody that's not, you're looked at as outside, and things are different for you.
Well, and I think religion still plays a big part in some people's ideas. That's why I don't go to church anymore, because I'm not going to take my daughter to a place where they're going to tell her that she is wrong for being herself.
Yep.
I'm not going to do it, because so to end on kind of a lighter note, I can tell you, because Novalee doesn't mind me telling you, but I can tell you that Novalee knew she was a lesbian when she was pretty young. And she kind of told me when she was kind of young, and I just said, hey, that's cool. You can love whoever you want. I'm going to love you no matter what, but you're a little young to be thinking about anybody romantically. So, maybe let's not do that.
How about let's just talk about how cute puppies are?
Yeah, I was like, can we, talk about anything but, you dating? Because you're very young, and I don't even want to think about that right now.
Because you're not dating until you're 30.
Yeah. And so then as she got older, she was thought that she was bisexual for a little bit, and she told me and Ryan, my fiance, and we were just kind of like, okay, cool. Love whoever you want to love. It's fine. And then she was like, well, I really think I'm a lesbian. And I think it was because some of my family has some religious beliefs, and she didn't want to disappoint them. And when she said that, I said, great, awesome. I was happy for her, because I have literally raised my kids to always be whoever they want to be, always, and to not care what other people think, because I wish I didn't care what other people thought of me when I was growing up, and I cared too much what other people thought of me. Yeah. So I didn't ever want them to feel that way. But we just embraced her, and we told her we loved her, and we support her. And I think it's hard enough, right? When you grow up, even if you're normal right now, teenage years suck. And not having
100%.
Yeah, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go back and do that all over again.
Nope.
But having that support of your family when times are hard is so important. And I never want her to feel like she's wrong. Like, I want her to feel accepted, which is exactly why we are taking her to Pride, because
well, and that's the thing too, like for her to be able to figure that out now, like that's also, I think, a signal of the times too. Like we've talked about, like I'm in my 30s and kind of just figuring out my own shit, and the fact that she's so young and she's able to already start to figure all that stuff out, like that's so important. And like you said, first of all, kids are assholes. Kids are mean. Kids were mean to me, and it was just because I was chubby and read books constantly.
Books are better than people anyway.
It's true. But it's like you've got so many compounding pressures, because just the pressure of being a kid and going to school, all that fucking sucks.
Yes,
dealing with your peers, and everybody is so. First of all, high school never goes away. There's always people that are concerned about status and concerned about people liking them and concerned about what you're wearing and all that kind of stuff. People say high school goes away. High school doesn't go away. You realize later that high school doesn't matter. But it's like dealing with that on top of figuring out yourself.
Yeah.
It's so hard that like home should be safe. Home should be safe and easy.
The way Gwen's home was. How they accepted her, and things I read, like her sister was just excited to dress her up, and it should be that way.
And just like you can see the happiness after just being true. Like they're so uncomfortable before, to finally be like, this is how I'm comfortable. Like now I feel like I belong in myself.
Yeah.
Like, why would that be a reason to hate somebody? Also, like, this is a tower of soapboxes.
On and on and on.
This is a tower of soapboxes.
Go ahead,
Jess,
take it away.
I just realized I gotta be careful, otherwise it's gonna be like 3 hours of us just like going off. It's like 10 different soapboxes of just, I'll kick that one off and start on the next thing. But I'm so over societal norms. Who the fuck decided that's normal? Just because it has been. The only reason it has been is because people that were different had no voice back then.
Yep.
And it's not some fad that everybody's like jumping on this bus of like, oh, we're gonna be different. No, that's harder. That's harder, because there's people out there that hate you just because you're you.
Yeah. And they're never gonna like you no matter how normal you act.
And that's not even limited to the LGBTQIA community.
No, that's everybody.
I'm not gonna say some things I'm gonna say because I don't want to make people angry. But if you're not, quote, normal, then
you're not a cool kid.
You're struggling.
Yeah.
Because there's systemic things that keep the system unbalanced.
Yeah. I think yes to everything you just said. I like am thinking
that was one soapbox I can kick out to the side.
I think too that the research I did, right, it talks about how she was bullied growing up because she knew from such a young age. So she started to dress more feminine, and she had kind of a feminine voice, and she's gorgeous, which is why I say like maybe it was also like a jealousy thing, like one, people not understanding and not thinking that's normal, as you said, and two, it was maybe a jealousy thing. I don't know. But whatever it was completely uncalled for and shouldn't have never happened.
No. I can't. Again, it's like the logic side of my brain that struggles with why people get so upset about it. Like clothes being gendered, right? Like, oh, well, as a female, I can wear skirts and I can wear jeans and everybody's cool with that. But if some guy decides that he wants to wear jeans and also wants to wear skirts, that's a big fucking deal. It's cloth. Okay, who the hell cares?
But guys, kilts are pretty awesome. So what's the big difference?
I agree 100%. But you take that tartan design off of it, and all of a sudden it's fucking weird. Nah, it's clothes. You're fine with me wearing pants. He's fine wearing a skirt or a dress. It doesn't fucking matter. It's an article of clothing. Get over yourself.
Like, give some advice on that too? Like, I'm sorry, but if you're so wrapped up in what someone else is doing because you're so uncomfortable with yourself that you need to focus your attention on someone else, maybe get some help. Like, it's not hurting you, so move the fuck on. Today, I took a call for this guy who was calling in because he was worried about his son. And he was worried about his son because he was saying that he was feeling suicidal. And so then I said, what's your son's name? And then he said, well, their birth name or their legal name is this because they're transgender. And so then that whole rest of that call, right, I made a point to say him. I made a point to say the name that he chose. And honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. Before Nova, I was ignorant too. Like, I was uncomfortable with who I was because I had dated men and women, and I felt that people looked at me differently if they knew that. And Nova has taught me so much, right? I've learned so much from her because she is so comfortable being herself. So I made it a point to use his name and say him, even after he told me that, even though that's their quote unquote legal name, because one, I thought, how great is it that this dad is supporting him? Like, how great is it? Like, listening to him say that, one. And two, this person's already going through a hard time. You should just be able to respect their decisions and to call them whatever they want to be called.
Yeah, right? I don't understand getting so hung up on something that doesn't matter to you. It's their life. Yeah. Like, if I decided I wanted to go cut my hair short and dye it bright pink, like, it's a part of me that I want to change.
Mm-hmm. That has nothing to do with you.
It doesn't matter to anybody else around me.
And so here's my thought too, is like, if you love someone or you care about them in any way, or even if you don't know them, shouldn't you just want to be a nice human being? Shouldn't you just want to support them? Shouldn't you just want them to feel comfortable? Shouldn't you want to not make their life worse than they already feel inside, probably? Like, like I said, Nova has taught me a lot, and I'm thankful for that, because even now I'm still like learning things from her about the LGBTQ community and about my ideas that maybe I need to change, right? Or ideas that I hear other people, like you said, talk about, not even at work, like just everywhere. And I have to step in and be like, hey, I'm not comfortable with you saying that. Like, my daughter is a lesbian and I'm going to support her. And I don't want to be around people who don't.
Yep.
Even with family, I've had to say that. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Like you said, we could go on and on and on. But
One soapbox kicked aside. Where's my next one?
I really wanted to say, one, happy Pride, Novalee. You're amazing. And happy Pride to everyone else. And I hope that you will go out and go to your Pride parades and celebrate. And maybe we can tell the story of the Stonewall riots, which is how the whole Pride parades and marches started one day. And if you don't know about it, I just encourage you to look it up because it's pretty interesting.
Yes. And, you know, if you are one of our listeners out there and you feel alone, you're not alone.
And always be yourself. Always.
Yep. If you want to get involved, you want to help out, but you're not sure how, there's plenty of organizations out there that help, specifically outreach that helps the LGBTQIA community. There's also Trevor Project, which specifically goes towards helping LGBTQIA youth who have suicidal tendencies and suicidal ideations. They do a lot of work with them, which is really awesome because, like we said, life is hard already as a kid.
Well, and also there's a lot of schools now, like if you have a child or you know somebody who's in school still, or I'm sure at colleges and stuff too, they have like rainbow clubs and stuff that you can get involved in. So maybe encourage them to look into that, because maybe they will find some more people who are supportive of them. And all the support can't hurt, right?
That's right. Life sucks. If you find a way to be happy, do it. Life's so hard.
As long as you're happy and you're not like happy murdering people or, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, that stuff I can't support. But everything else.
Yeah, as long as you're happy.
I draw the line.
Involve murder.
Or, like, you know, any kind of other super weird criminal stuff. Okay?
Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Truth Lies and Alibis.